Morning. I'm Rox Burkey, co-author of Enigma series, and I have the honor, total honor, of having a discussion today with Louis Sauvain, who is the amazing author, beginning with the first book, Thaddeus of Beewicke. Welcome, Louis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Rox. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Not a problem. So, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I've read everything that you've already published. But I think it's important for us to share with the listeners and your fans specifically, how did you come up with this amazing world that Thaddeus is such a hero in?
Well, I tell you what, it started back in 1975 when I was driving to Chicago for some reason. And it occurred to me that it would be amusing to think of a series of stories that had to do with kids at a sorcerer's school, where my first thought was all the tricks and all the mischief they could get into, and then what the experienced and elderly faculty might know to counteract that. So I had that thought for a while. Then after that sort of began to evolve into, well, maybe not so much on the jokes. What if it were an adventure? And it just kind of took off from there.
One of the things that I have noticed, and when I actually show your books to other people, is the amazing maps that are inside the books. And fantasy, which is your genre primarily, those individuals love the maps. They love the world building. So how did you create these maps and when? In what order compared to the stories?
Sure. The maps were created in the order that the stories were written and published, but I myself have no particular graphic skills. So I called upon a friend who was a fellow epic fantasy person, and I said, "Here's what I have in mind." And he made a sketch, and we worked on it for a while, and finally got it to the point where we thought we could use it in the book.
And it's definitely a hit. People absolutely love the whole world building thing. And on the first adventure, Thaddeus of Beewicke, I mean, he goes on an adventure. You're not kidding when you say, "Oh no, I decided to make it an adventure." Now they get into a little bit of trouble, but how does that book frame the rest of the series?
Well, when I originally wrote the book, um, I had been reading a lot of Robert Jordan at the time, and his books are extraordinarily long, which is great for epic fantasy lovers. And so I wrote the first three books I have now as one book, with some 1,500 pages. And in my early attempts to contact people in the publishing area, they would look at the number of pages and go, "No, no, I don't think so. Thanks for contacting us, though." So then I decided to chop it up, and I thought the first book really should end with Thaddeus arriving at the college. And so a lot of stuff would happen between it, and then I could use that as an opportunity to set the world.
So I think that's fabulously interesting. So what you have at this point in time, you actually have three trilogies to take this group through different phases of their journey as sorcerers.
Right there, arc of life.
Arc of life. There you go. I love that terminology. So if we really focus, let's say, on the first trilogy, what happens that's so meaningful to Thaddeus during his journey to the college that sets the stage so well?
Well, the way we have him is that he's just a backcountry lad. He has no experience, no sense of the world, nothing at all. He is, as we would expect of such a fellow, and he's in his early teens. So he has to go from that point to the point where he can accept and understand that there's such a thing as sorcery, and perhaps begin to have an idea of how to use it and what his place in the world might be. That takes some time to get him from the one place to the other. That's what we use the first book for.
And so along that journey, he also comes across some what become lifelong companions or friends or devoted buddies in there. Did you decide that originally, or was that something that you kind of thought about later that he needed company?
No, I thought about that from the beginning. Uh, uh, I think that uh, the idea of his being able to do everything by himself just it didn't gel. Also, he with the idea that he needed other points of view and other ways of looking at things, and that he could find people to rely on in case he got in a tight spot, and find people to help if they needed it. Just occurred as a natural idea that there would be others involved.
Now, one of the characters within the first trilogy that I am particularly fond of, and you know this because you and I've talked about this before, is there is a mule that runs the whole gambit from, oh my goodness, to hysterically funny. Where did the mule come from?
Well, I tell you what, some people have commented to me or asked the question, is the mule derivative of something like the donkey that appeared in the Shrek series? And I said, no, not really. I first had the idea of the mule from way back in some of the old time movies in the 1940s or so. There was a character called Francis the Talking Mule. And I saw that when I was a kid once, growing up, a couple of those. And I always thought that was so cool. The other thing that played a part in that was I wanted him to have a companion. And at first I thought, well, maybe it would be just a big dog that followed him along, was very loyal and all that. But then I thought, if it were a mule or something like that, a horse maybe, he could ride it and talk to it. It would be big enough to help him if he got in a jam. And then I thought next, well, a horse, no, how's a backcountry boy going to get a horse? You know, they hardly have two coppers to rub together. So we ended up with a mule, and it happened to be a mule he befriended, who was brought by the fellow that recruited him.
Which brings me to another point. Tell us a little bit about the fellow that recruited him.
Yes, well, his name is Sylvester, which has to do with his being in the woods a lot, from the Latin for Sylvan and all that. And so he goes about the country every so often, recruiting young boys for the College of Sorcerers. That's where he's the one of the head professors, and he has a keen eye for likely lads, let's say. So he goes about his business, and he happened to just stumble into the place where our hero lived, and saw immediately that he would be a likely candidate. And then he had to convince his folks to let the boy go, uh, which is was easier in those days than perhaps it might be these days. But anyway, um, he did this, and it turns out that a lot of what Thaddeus learned about things in life, as well as his profession, came from his relationship with this man.
So they have almost a father-son kind of a relationship, just at a whole different level than a normal parent.
Right.
So that's pretty exciting, actually. So, when you conclude that first trilogy, do you find that many of your fans are on the edge of their seat waiting for the next book?
Uh, Thankfully, yes. I hadn't thought that it would turn out that way because I didn't know at all where things were going to go, or even if there would be other books. I hoped there would be, but I didn't know. But as it turns out, many times, thankfully, the comments that come in are that that's how they felt, that after reading the book, they wanted to, it was a bit of a edge hanging on the cliff there, and they wanted to find out what happened next. So once I got into like the second or third book, then I started to do that on purpose.
Very nice. Very nice. The other thing I want to do before we close off is I want to talk a little tiny bit about the covers, because these covers are amazing. And you mentioned that you didn't have the graphic artist, but you obviously have friends. Can you tell us a little bit about the covers?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I was very fortunate indeed to be introduced to what's her title? Cover editor excellence, I think is how she styles herself. Her name's Rebecca Finkel, and she is stationed out in cold Colorado, and she makes the covers, which I have some samples of here. I think one that was particularly caught a lot of people's eye is the one where Thaddeus meets a demon. But it's that kind of graphic representation. I've been told many times, a lot of them by yourself, really. You tend to repeat sometimes, but that's okay. That one of the things you want to do when you're walking through the bookstore is have a cover that tends to pop out or catch people's eyes. And this lady is extraordinarily adept in doing that. I appreciate it very much.
I couldn't agree with you more. So, Louis Sauvain, I appreciate your time, and perhaps we'll do another segment shortly. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.